Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the Why Veg panel discussion. My name is Sarah and I will be facilitating this discussion panel. This event is hosted by Guelph Students for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, also known as GSETA. And what we do is advocate and raise awareness about animal ethics and animal rights issues. So how this format is going to work is that these panelists here will be sharing their experiences, opinions, and knowledge about being vegetarian and or vegan and or other dietary and lifestyle choices that they've made. And the format is going to be that I will be asking a scheduled question or a directed question towards the panelists. They'll answer those questions, and then the floor will be opened to the audience to ask whatever questions come to their minds. And then I'll be asking another directed question, and they'll be answering those, and then the audience will be opened up again to ask more questions, and it'll continue as so on. So. And if you ask a question, you get to have a yummy vegan chocolate from the Stone Store. Okay, so to start, I'm going to be asking each panelist to introduce themselves. So first I'll be asking for them to say their name, the work that they do and or the school program that they're in, what their dietary or lifestyle choice is, how long they've had this diet and lifestyle for, and the number one reason that they've made this choice. So we'll start with the panelists closest to me.
Can you hear me? Cool. Okay, so my name is Becca. I'm Becca Fedema. This is another Rebecca, so we'll clarify that now. I'm a first-year student here at the University of Guelph in animal biology. Yes, I'm one of those vet wannabes. My dietary choice is I've been vegan for 6 years, and I eat raw vegan during the weeks, so just fruits and vegetables. Crazy, I know. And I've had the diet for 6 years. The raw vegan's new, though. The number one reason why I am vegan is because I'm from an agricultural background, and growing up I got to see how agricultural practices work, and I didn't approve and didn't think that I needed products that contributed to cruelty to animals.
Hi everyone, I'm also Rebecca Jacobs this time. I'm a third-year student here at Guelph, and I'm a vegan. I've been vegan for almost 4 years now. And basically I became vegan because I took an environmental science class in high school which showed the documentary Food Inc. And that was pretty mind-opening for me. I didn't realize that these practices went on, and that's really what started it. And I decided to go vegan and only local food for a month, much to my parents' dismay. But I stuck with it.
Hi everyone, I'm Simran. I am in first year and I'm in zoology right now. I'm a vegetarian. I'm going towards veganism, and I've been vegetarian for over 4 years now. And the main reason I chose this lifestyle is because I was fortunate enough to see I saw slaughter. I saw how the goats were slaughtered and how chickens were kept, the conditions they lived in. So that's why I chose to live a cruelty-free lifestyle.
Hi, my name is Ariel Levitsky. I used to go to Guelph. I did my undergraduate here in the biological sciences, and I did my master's degree here in conservation genetics. I currently work for a site called nutritionfacts.org. It's run by an MD, and it's based in Washington, D.C. And it's focused on disseminating the latest in nutrition research in accessible videos that are usually between 2 and 8 minutes long. All the videos are based on peer-reviewed journal articles. You're welcome to check it out. I've also worked for the Toronto Environmental Alliance and for Greenpeace. I started going vegetarian when I was 14. I was vegetarian by 16, and I've been vegan since I was 21, so approximately 4 years now. I initially went vegan because of the animal cruelty reasons, essentially. My first exposure was watching undercover videos when I was 13. However, since then, essentially every other reason, every other benefit for going vegan has also joined. So the environmental impacts of consuming meat, as well as the impact on world hunger and things like post-traumatic stress disorder for slaughterhouse workers. Yeah.
Okay, so the first directed question that I'll be asking each panelist is, how did your family and friends react when you decided to make this dietarian lifestyle change? And also, how did society react as a whole?
So I suspected that my family wouldn't be very accepting, considering we produce poultry, beef, and dairy. My family's from Alberta. And so I actually started going vegetarian secretly, and then one day decided to tell my mother. So I haven't eaten meat for a month, and I think I'm going to go vegan. I don't think I need it anymore. I've been trying this out, and I actually do think it's okay. Their reaction was that I'm going to go insane and I'm going to die. That's obviously not true. Both of them didn't have much education about nutrition because actually, as you may know, the food pyramid created in Canada is actually sponsored by the dairy and the meat industry. So they didn't see any other way of living, and they thought it was going to be extremely unhealthy for me. But I actually lost 130 pounds. I was quite big, but that's okay. And I got a lot healthier, and a lot of my other health problems seemed to resolve after going vegan. And so both of them started to consider vegetarianism and are currently working towards eliminating products in their diet.
So I had a pretty good reaction when I told my friends and family. I was pretty lucky, I think. My parents are really supportive of me, so they, took me out to local farmers markets to help me buy local produce, because like I said, I went local food only as well. And this was in May, so there wasn't too much available. But yeah, my family has always been really supportive, which I find I'm very lucky with, talking to other people who don't have that same support. My friends, mostly just confused, didn't really know what vegan was or why I was doing it. Even though a couple of them are vegetarian, it is quite a big lifestyle change going vegan compared to that. So they were always supportive, but I had to teach them a lot of stuff as well.
So one thing I would like people to keep in mind is that I was a really big meat eater. I would love my chicken wings and McDonald's and everything. So when I became a vegetarian, when I made that decision, it was a really big shock to family and friends. And they all thought I was crazy. They thought I was probably going to end up dying from malnutrition or something. And as a result, I was forced out of it a lot. So I was bullied in school when I was 14. I was picked on a lot by relatives, and it's just something you have to overcome. And I still face it every day. So that's the biggest problem for me right now. It's just the negative impacts, and it's a cultural norm. So just the negative things you will have to face and hear.
So I'm probably the oldest individual here on the panel. So when I first attempted going vegetarian, there were very few alternatives available, period, much less anything available at my local grocery store. I was the only vegetarian student in my high school of 1,800 people, and I definitely was picked on a lot. There was one year where I was made fun of the entire year just for ordering a veggie burger on a school trip that we went on. Luckily, things like that don't affect me very easily, so it was fine. My family's response, my father's response, was essentially much like, I think, Rebecca's. You're going to die. That was his initial response. Luckily, he didn't pursue the matter much further, but that was his perception when I first went. I'm happy to report that it has changed since then, and he has admitted that the vegan or the vegetarian diet is, by current standards, one of the healthiest options available to us. So things have really changed since then.
Okay, so now I'll provide an opportunity for anyone in the audience to ask any questions. So if you have a question, just put up your hand and I'll bring the mic towards you, and you can, or to you, not towards you. It'd be kind of weird. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions?
Have any of you, due to like pressure from families or friends, ever like fallen off your vegan or vegetarian bandwagon? Like, has it ever been too much and have you just given up, maybe for a while?
Because of your family or friends, have you ever gone back? Even temporarily?
Personally, I haven't, because the way I see it, it's my diet over their life. And so oftentimes, if I have to endure a little bit of frustration, then that's fine, because I know I'm making the choice for myself. And I believe that my belief in equality for all species is great enough that I see it almost as a spiritual religion. I truly believe in this, and this is what holds me up. So I believe that that should be respected, and I'll respect their beliefs as well. So I just kind of let it go calmly.
I haven't gone non-vegan under pressure, but I definitely do change my standards of what I would or would not eat. So at home, you know, when it's just me cooking, you know, dairy products and whatnot don't go near my food. But if I'm with friends or a big group, I'll be less picky about what is there. So things like barbecues, for me, it's more difficult to try and insist that someone clean a barbecue and have a section just for me. And I'm okay with allowing that, well, allowing is a bad word, but letting that go and just being happy about it.
Luckily, I'm not the type of person who's affected very heavily by stigma, but I know that that's not true of everybody. I know that being humiliated by your friends or by your family or being outcast can be incredibly difficult for a lot of people, and I don't think it's something that anybody should be ashamed of. If people do go back, if you do try vegetarianism or veganism and you do go back, don't be ashamed of it. The most important thing is perseverance. Wait until you have an opportunity to try again. You know, not everybody is capable of continuing despite pressures from family and loved ones.
For me, it's mostly relatives who would push me back out of it. So I would just simply brush it off and say that, no, you can't do it, but I can do it. And that's all I say. I've never gone back to eating meat again.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay.
Hi, thank you. I think you've covered some of these things, but I find at outreach events, students who are still living at home feel that switching to a vegan or vegetarian diet might be problematic. Can any of you comment any further on advice you might give to university students still living at home that are trying to deal with parental pressures? Because it's a really common comment that I get.
So I actually did go vegetarian, vegan when I was in high school, still living at home. And like I said, my parents were not supportive whatsoever. So I tried to make it as appealing as possible to them, just saying that, you know what, it's okay, because I'll cook my own meal and you don't have to worry about it. And I'll even cook extra and you can try it. And I think the thing to take into consideration is just to be positive and to be happy about it, because you got to realize that I ate meat at one point and I ate dairy at one point. So like, everyone starts off somewhere. So as long as there's mutual respect, I think then sharing is good, and it should be doable as long as there's communication, just like most good relationships.
I think if you are living at home and you are considering going vegetarian and your family isn't supportive, the easiest method of doing so is simply to ask them to make sure that any of the non-meat aspects of the meal that they prepare, like a salad or potatoes, that they don't add any meat or potentially, if you're trying out veganism, dairy. And then all you can do is just get some alternatives for yourself and quickly cook it on the side. So it's very easy to get vegan chicken breasts, it's very easy to get vegan sausages, beef, etc. You can just cook it on the side. It'll take you about 1/10 of the time to cook it as it would take the rest of your family with actual meat, and just add it to the rest of the meal. The easiest way that you can get around it. And it saves everybody a lot of trouble, and they can certainly try the alternatives out themselves if they want to. And it also wouldn't require you to significantly change your palate, because the alternatives would be very similar to what you would be eating anyways.
Great. Okay, so we'll go on to the next directed question. So what are some challenges that you initially faced when you made this change, and what are some challenges that you still face? So that's been a little bit covered, so now we'll try to look at other types of challenges that don't really surround people's reactions.
Okay, so my initial challenge going vegetarian even was just not knowing. I wasn't very educated as to what was and what wasn't vegetarian, which will happen to everyone because you can't absorb everything at once. It's just like math. You have to memorize every ingredient, kind of. For example, when I was first vegetarian, I still consumed cheese that had rennet, which is actually, it's intestinal bacteria tissue from cows. And I still had gelatin, which is actually from animal bones. So I just didn't quite know, and that's okay because eventually you'll get there, and I found community that taught me a little bit. The problem I'm still facing now is, once again, I'm still finding more products that have animal stuff in them. I recently stopped using most of my makeup because I found that there were animal fats in them or beeswax in them, and I'm just constantly evolving and learning more. So I guess one could say you can't 100% be vegan, but you can certainly try, and you can continue to learn throughout your lifetime.
So as my biggest reason for being vegan is the environmental reasons behind it. Sometimes I do find that a challenge when I have to choose between what is probably the more eco-friendly product or the more sustainable product and the vegan product. So just a little example, just in the university, is all the vegan baked goods are each individually packaged in a little plastic wrapper versus the homemade, freshly baked, locally sourced cookies they have every day here. So, I mean, that seems like a nonsense kind of choice for most people, I'm sure, but for me it's not traumatizing. But it's a hard decision to make when I have to choose between little things like that. And also, of course, the fact that I cannot support a lot of local farmers during the off season because vegetables and fruit and whatnot is only produced in a small amount of time in Canada. Whereas if I did consume animal products, I could be supporting them all year round. So that is sometimes a hard choice to make. But having said that, I made the choice to go vegan, and I'm happy with that choice. And to me, it is the best option I can do. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge choosing or having to choose sometimes between environment and veganism.
For me, the biggest challenge is finding things to eat. I've had the problem of going to people's houses and there's no vegan or vegetarian food, or I can't really, I have problems finding food that has no animal products or makeup that has no animal products in it. So that's the really difficult problem you'll face. But it's okay. It's just a learning process. You learn more about the cruelty-free stuff, and it's difficult, but it's manageable.
I think the most difficult thing for me when I initially went vegetarian or vegan was maintaining or completely sticking to the diet in times of emotional or physical exhaustion. So, for example, if I was studying at a coffee shop and it was 11 o'clock and I had been there for 4 hours and the coffee shop doesn't have any vegan baked goods, but I'm exhausted and starving and it's going to be another hour and a half before I get home and make food, I wouldn't purchase anything and consume it, but those were definitely the most difficult moments for me. In terms of currently, there are very few things that remain difficult for me right now. I think much like with Rebecca, it's difficult doing a lot of the background research on a lot of the products that you're consuming, or it can be difficult because there can be a couple of hidden ingredients like certain colors and whatnot. But once again, it's not really about being 100% vegan. Even if you're vegan a couple of meals a day, that makes a gigantic difference.
Great. Okay, so now we'll open it up for questions again. So does anyone now have any questions they'd like to ask the panelists? Yeah? Okay. Here's a chocolate.
So my sister is vegan. I'm not vegan, but my sister is, and I was just gonna ask, like, what type of things could me or like my parents do in order to, like, okay, my parents aren't so for it because they're super like conservative, like they're immigrants, so they don't really understand the background behind it. But like I'm totally for it. I'm like, go for it. What else can I do to like tell her and encourage her to be vegan, I guess? And I can't change her mind, so.
I think a big thing is being open to, if she's a big cook, being open to what she makes. I know I always almost get made fun of for making food that I do, not because it's the food, but, you know, a chocolate chip cookie, oh, it's vegan. Like, that reaction sometimes can be frustrating, and it may just be an automatic reaction or maybe joking, but just being supportive of the food that she makes, and then also showing that you're open to learning some of these foods yourself, or learning some of the knowledge, so why she's vegan, or why someone you know is vegan, and showing that you know you're doing your own research, or you look up a recipe and make it for her, stuff like that. It's really encouraging, and so basically just the small things are really helpful when a lot of what we see is not supportive. The little things showing that you do support her make a big difference.
Also, a little bit of patience, because going through the period of transitioning to veganism, I found that I did encounter a few different emotions. You'll go through periods of wondering, why doesn't everyone else understand it? Why would other people want to consume animals? Sometimes it's just a little bit frustrating knowing that somebody is eating something in front of you. So as long as everyone's respectful, it's totally fine. But if something gets said, then talk about it. Maybe have conversations about what's being eaten. But you just got to remember that we see a lot of animal products in our day, and we are shown a lot of things. So sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating for us. But I'm still totally happy eating with different family members who even work on the farm. I'm happy going home to the farm. So just be patient and just be happy. Take everything in stride.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it the first time around.
Like, how should I be supportive for my sister? Because she's vegan,
Oh,
and
okay.
like, I do a couple of things. Like, I don't know if you guys know Deliciously Ella.
Pardon?
Deliciously Ella, the
Okay.
cook. She's like a vegan chef, and like I try to make a couple of those things. So she's like, oh my god, yeah, I made like a chocolate mousse the other day that was vegan. So stuff like that. But I'm like, is there anything else in specific that I could do?
Honestly, I think if it were me, the most considerate thing that a friend or family member could do is do a little of background research themselves, because it can be really exhausting explaining to other people why you're vegan sometimes on a regular basis, particularly if you're close to them, or trying to defend your position or trying to defend your perspective. So I think even the fact that you're here right now shows that you clearly care about her and that you want to understand her perspective a little more. And I think that's amazing. I wish a lot more people would do that.
Great, that was a good question. Does anyone else have any more questions? Yeah? Sorry, I'll get you a chocolate.
Hi, my daughter is vegan. I'm not, but I definitely eat much more consciously and carefully and healthily because of her. There is the issue of clothing and how clothing is made, shoes, etc. What are your thoughts on those clothing, furniture even?
So once again, I am from an agricultural background, so I understand that most people would think that leather is a byproduct of meat because you take the meat and then you have the leather left over. But actually, leather is just as profitable as meat. So it's a co-product of the meat industry. So supporting things like leather would not be in my code because even though I don't eat meat, I would still be supporting the slaughter of animals. Also, when it comes to different things such as fur, the body is not often used, and so that is not good for the environment, so I would not be for fur for those reasons. And then lastly, wool. There is a lot of cruel practices that happen in the wool industry, such as mulesing and tail docking. If you actually look online, sheep have tails like cats in nature. You should go look it up. It's pretty cool. But I think that vegan is not just a diet, it's also a lifestyle. So there are a lot of really good alternatives. Like as you could see, if this tablecloth is not in the way, I'm actually wearing cowboy boots. I'm from out west, and they are vegan. And there's tons of vegan alternatives nowadays that look just like the real thing. So give that a try.
Yeah, kind of the same answers in terms of why vegans choose not to use a lot of these products as well. But again, coming from an environmental standpoint, to me, I would never throw out stuff that I already had that may contain animal products. I'm not going to make my parents throw out all leather couches. I would never contemplate asking that question. But also, like I said before, being aware and open to doing some research into alternatives. And there are, of course, a lot of vegan clothing lines now, but also regular or well-known clothing lines that carry a lot of accidentally vegan stuff. So I find that Payless shoes, most of their shoes are vegan by default. I went to Skechers to get my winter boots. It just takes, again, being patient, it takes more time to do some shopping sometimes, but yeah, being patient with that and open to research.
I think that most vegans would agree that since we all love the environment, the two best options for old animal products that people have would be to donate them to charity to someone who can't afford something at all. So I had a lot of Gucci purses for my mom. I donated them to a women's shelter, and then someone got some really nice purses. I just couldn't stand having the thought of having the purses. But also you could just wear it out. And if someone were to say anything to you, then just say you're wearing it out, because throwing it in the landfill is not going to help anyone.
I think you have a couple of choices if you are concerned about the clothing that you wear, and we all should be. If you're looking for something a little higher end, there are a lot of great clothing lines. Off the top of my head, Vote Couture is an all-vegan fair trade company that makes winter jackets and other clothing items out of recycled materials. Vote Couture, and they're based out of New York. It's run by an amazing activist, Leanne Maylee-Hilgard, and she's vegan as well. Her clothing line was the first one featured in New York Fashion Week, the first all-vegan clothing line featured in New York Fashion Week. In terms of shoes, you have Nice Shoes, which is a Vancouver-based company. You can order them online. If you want something that's completely fair trade, made in the USA and vegan, a new shoe company just came out. I backed them. I backed their Kickstarter. It's called Nikura Jones, or Johns, Nikura Johns, and that's from, I think she's based on the West Coast in the States, and she employs shoemakers from United States, so it's kind of amazing. Then if you're looking at a lower budget, Rebecca mentioned Payless shoes. You can also go with Spring. Spring usually has a lot of faux leather. Faux leather is essentially polyurethane, have a lot of polyurethane shoes. Then if you want to go lower than that, I would suggest purchasing used clothing items. I always say that the only thing more vegan than buying a vegan pair of shoes is buying a pair of shoes that was going to be thrown into the landfill. I would opt for buying a $5 pair of leather shoes that was going to be thrown out, than buy a vegan alternative where new resources are being funneled into creating these new pair of shoes. But I will never, ever, ever, even if it's from a fair trade company, if it's from an environmentally friendly company, I will never buy a new pair of leather shoes or a new wool sweater or anything of that sort.
Okay, that was another really great question. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next directed question, if that's okay, and then we'll open it up for more questions after that. So the next directed question is to tell us a little bit about some positive experiences or lessons that you've learned as a vegan or vegetarian, or whatever other choice you've made.
So I have two positive experiences to share. One was I came from a very poor part of town. I'm from St. Catharines area, and vegan was actually pretty cheap for me because you don't buy the meat, you don't buy the dairy. That takes out like a lot of your grocery budget. But there was no vegans around St. Catharines in that area because it just wasn't very socially developed. And coming to Guelph, I found GSETA and realized that there's a group that's totally accepting of the way I'm pretty much a hippie and love to make my own soy milk and sit around and eat a lot of vegan food. So that was a positive experience. Another one for me was I had my dog go vegan. My dog is a vegan dog, and I make her food for her from a lot of different sources, such as I have some friends who do dumpstering and they bring me stuff. And she has actually gotten a lot healthier. Her coat's beautiful, and she is a rescue. And she was previously very malnourished, and she is very happy. So that experience was pretty good for me. And that's just another way I'm cutting down on the animal products that I use.
So I would definitely second community as a big one. Coming from Toronto, I got really involved in GSETA when I first moved to Guelph. Having things like vegan bake sales, you can't imagine how thrilling it is to walk in and know that you can eat everything. And I definitely eat way too much at every opportunity I have at those, such as the bake sale we have today, hint hint. But also definitely a really positive experience, I think, for anything is inspiring people, not just with veganism, but with any sort of passion that you have. When you can see someone learning from you and getting involved, and you see the passion in their eyes later on, it's really great. So I mean, I started up a vegetarian club in my high school, and I had a younger girl come up to me at the end of the year. She'd been part of the club. You know, it was like 3 of us there, but she'd been part of it, and she came up to me at the end of the year and said, "Oh, I'm going to go and try and go vegan now." And it was so nice to see that I had an impact on someone else. So again, that comes not just from vegan or your dietary choice, any passion you have, it's nice to see it being transitioned.
Ever since I became vegetarian, I've been doing a lot of speaking and advocating animal rights and the cruelty these animals face in slaughterhouses. So I've done a few debates in school, out of school, and with people. And in every debate I've spoken in or every presentation I've done, I've had people come up to me and say that they've been inspired to change. And I've had many people now go into vegetarianism and actually veganism, and now that's the best feeling, to know that you're helping both people and animals. And like that's the best outcome. Like from all the negatives, that's the best.
I think, obviously, including all the experiences that have been mentioned, one of the positives of going vegan for me was actually realizing how easy it is to change, and how easy it is to change your habits, and how easy it is to change your lifestyle for the better. I'm sure you can all relate that the hardest part of changing is just the start, and once you're past that, the sense of reward and the sense of success that you feel completely outweighs any of the challenges that you might face. And going vegetarian, going vegan, being able to change my lifestyle for what at the time seemed really like a very drastic change, it really gave me a lot of power to change a lot of other aspects of my lifestyle and just adopt a much healthier perspective and lifestyle on life. It does allow you to feel very powerful, and you do wake up every day knowing that just by living, even if you do nothing else, just by living the way that you're living, you're making a huge impact. It's a really big self-esteem boost.
Great. Okay, so now I will again open it up to the audience. Yeah. So here's a chocolate.
So we've talked a lot about different aspects of a vegan lifestyle, like we touched on pets and like food and clothing. But what about like other aspects of life? Like, have you had any like experiences where you kind of went like, I can veganize as part of my life, like say hobbies or sports or spirituality, religion, like anything like that?
Someone else want to go first? I'm always going first. Who wants to go first?
I think, honestly, anything you can possibly think of, if you type it into Google and add the word vegan, there'll probably be a blog about it. I know there was an entire blog post that had something like 50 comments about finding a vegan baseball glove and how to find it and what's the best one. Richard. So yes, I think most vegans try to veganize most aspects of their life. With sports, for example, you're trying to go for something that's non-leather, whether it be a baseball glove or a football or something of that sort. In terms of religion, regardless of what religion you come from, regardless of which religion you come from, there's definitely a vegan take on it. So not that I'm saying that PETA is the best resource, but even PETA has Christian perspectives, Jewish perspectives on veganism. Buddhism is intrinsically linked with vegetarianism and veganism. We had several members of GSETA have been religious and have even been vegan for religious reasons. We had an individual who was a devoted Christian and also a devoted vegan. So I think regardless of whichever religion you subscribe to, there's definitely a vegan perspective on it.
So I find that there's everywhere in my life an opportunity to make a difference for an animal. Just a few to name. I do not support anything that has animals in captivity. So I guess you could say I'm a little bit of an abolitionist in the way that I don't believe in things like marine land. I don't think that the Ripley's Aquarium is okay. We're putting these fish that would span the entire ocean into a bathtub. So I believe I can make a difference by not giving money to this organization. I wouldn't ever support things like horse racing, anything that directly harm an animal. Things like testing on animals. You have to do your research at times. For example, certain even medical charities. I know different charities that raise money for cancer research. They actually do their cancer research on animals, and they use things such as knockout tests or knockout breeds, which are breeds that are inherent to get disease and die. So these mice suffer their entire life. And they do things such as LD50 tests, which are made mandatory in Canada, where they have a population of, say, 1,000 animals, and they have to do the test until 50% of them die. So I believe I can make a difference there. And then even in my education, I have found out recently that the University of Guelph, our vet school over here, in our undergraduate programs, we do testing on animals. And then at the OVC, there's testing on animals. But you can work with your course coordinator, and you're always allowed to ask for an alternative. You can always make a difference, and no matter what it is, you just need to talk to whoever's in charge.
Is this on? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, so does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask at this point? Yeah?
This is sort of unrelated, but it's mostly directed at the Rebecca to the right, my right. I am leaning towards veganism for environmental reasons, and I just am a little bit surprised, sort of, if environmentalism is your top priority, and that ties in very closely with veganism most of the time. Some things like, for example, possum wool is not exactly nice to the possums because they get killed, but it is very environmentally friendly because they're an invasive species, for example. So I just wondered if you could explain more, like how you would deal with these trade-offs. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. It can be a challenge. So I think it comes down to personal choice a lot of the time, in terms of what you choose to support, or yeah, I mean, I can't really go further than that. It is a personal choice, and I think, like you mentioned, a lot of the time I find the environmental choice is also the vegan choice. So, you know, biodegradable products tend to be vegan as well. You know, they just tend to go hand in hand. Fair trade, the same reason. But in terms of, I mean, everything is context specific, sorry. So sometimes you will have something that may be more environmental and less vegan. The example you gave about invasive species, I don't know. It's up to you about what you would support or not.
Is it okay if I add something? Okay. I think that the kinds of conflicts that you're experiencing, they're very real, but I think they're very localized to specific issues. There's no question about it that veganism is the most environmentally friendly lifestyle change that you can make by far. In 2006, a report was commissioned by the United Nations that stated that that stated that livestock production was responsible for 18% of greenhouse gas emissions. A recent report that has reevaluated those numbers has stated that livestock production is responsible for 51% of our greenhouse gas emissions, and it has yet to be challenged in a peer-reviewed journal. It is yet to be challenged. So there is absolutely no question about it. If you do nothing else, going vegetarian is going to significantly reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, your ecological footprint. It will reduce it more so than being 100% local and then being 100% organic. And keep in mind, this is compared to 100%, and very few people are capable of being 100% local. So it is by far the most environmentally friendly choice that you can make. When you do come across those instances, I do think they're very localized, those conflicts. I do think they're very localized. And I think Rebecca's right in what she said. It is a matter of personal preference. But even if you're just subscribing to the diet in general, you're already making a huge impact, and that's the biggest part of it. You know, if you choose to buy a wool sweater that's handmade from Thailand because that's more environmentally friendly than acrylic, that's fine. But if you're vegan for the rest of the year, you're cutting down greenhouse gas emissions significantly.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next directed question. So, could you please name an awkward or difficult situation you've had to deal with, or one that you still might have to deal with regularly because of your diet and lifestyle? And then also please include any common misconceptions that you've heard or have been told or had to deal with.
So I, last semester and last summer, worked for the OSPCA in cruelty investigations in the exotic animal ward, and it was always awkward for me when there were fundraisers and there were barbecues with meat, because the way that I rationalize it is my job is to save these animals, and I create medical evaluations to win their court cases and get the compensation that they deserve to pay for their vet bills and take care of them. And I work really hard. And then to walk out of my office and see that my boss has paid to kill about 20 animals and now they're on a barbecue in front of my office is rather awkward. And I don't know where we've gotten off putting the value of one life over another. And why should a cow die in order to help a cat or a dog? I believe that they all deserve equality. And I actually, like I said, I'm from a cattle, dairy, and poultry background. And I have experienced calving. I've experienced different types of birth of different animals. And absolutely the most heartbreaking thing you can ever see an animal experience is when you take a calf away from its mother, because they have such a strong bond. We allow them to stay together for 2 hours in order to receive the colostrum that they need. But you'll see the mother follow the truck with the calf in it to the veal truck the entire mile that our farm spans, because we have free roam cattle. So this cow will follow the truck as long as it can and it will run. And so I think that if we are to eliminate animal cruelty as an SPCA, that we should not be supporting the animal production industry.
My point is slightly different to that. Common misconception that I would like to address is that vegans are against farming. It may be true in some cases, but it might not be true in all cases. I think vegans in general are against the type of farming that is being done, and by that I'm referring to large-scale factory production of animal products. And again, that comes down to animal rights cases, environmental, human labor as well. They're all interconnected issues. But a lot of vegans are not against farming principally, and that's just a misconception I would like to get cleared.
I think the most common thing I face is dealing with ignorance. In today's society, many people will often turn a blind eye to the reality these animals face. So you will, like, as a vegetarian, you will get a lot of questions, ignorant questions like, where do you get your protein from, or where do you get iron from, B12, etc. It's difficult and it's sometimes like very awkward, because I've dated hunters before. I've dated really hardcore meat eaters, and you just don't see eye to eye with them sometimes. So that's the most awkward situation, and it's a misconception because people think most vegetarians or vegans will force their ideology on those who aren't, and it's not the case. It's actually that the meat eaters pick on vegans and vegetarians, and that's why I guess that's the misconception. There's always a battle between meat eaters and vegans and vegetarians.
I tried to think of a really serious, awkward situation, but I couldn't come up with one. I also just wanted to balance a little bit of what the other panelists talked about. I think by far the most awkward situations I come across still is probably in dating. Because if you're out, if you're at a concert or you're at a bar, and an individual comes up to you and they're talking to you and they start to ask you for your number or ask you to see them later, and you ask them, are you vegan or vegetarian? And they say no. And most of the time I'll say, okay, well, that's okay then. And they start to ask you why is it a big deal? So you start to get into a philosophical discussion with a stranger that you don't know in a bar setting where it's probably loud, in a setting that's not really appropriate. So I think that's the most awkward situation I still experience. And I think one of the funniest things that people tell me is, well, but you know, it's okay, I don't hate vegans. I have no problem with vegans. I'm not like the other guys, which can also be very awkward because then you start getting into why that's actually an offensive thing to say to a vegan. So I think those are still the only awkward situations I get into right now. Other than that, most of my friends and family understand. You know, if I come over and there's meat on the table, they understand. It's not a big deal. So it's rare nowadays for me to be in an awkward situation.
Okay, so now I'll open it up to the audience. Okay. So here's the chocolate and here's the mic.
I'd just really like to know all your personal stories and inspirations for becoming vegan, if that's cool, and like how long you've done it for.
I just want to make sure we got the question correct. You want our personal stories as to how we went vegan and how long we've been vegan? Okay. I went over this a little bit at the beginning, but we'll do a quick one down the row. I actually went vegan because I am from an agricultural background, dairy, cattle, poultry, and I experienced calving for the first time and realized that a baby was taken away from its mother and going to be sent to slaughter. And I just, at that point, realized, why do we do this? I don't understand. Like, it's not socially acceptable for us to breastfeed off of our mothers when we're 20, so why are we breastfeeding off of a cow? And I just started to put things together. Looking into the eyes of a cat is the same as looking into the eyes of a pig. And I realized that the ethics behind it wouldn't make sense to eat one and love the other. So I've been vegan for 6 years.
Been vegan for 4 years now, vegetarian for a while before that, and I saw the movie Food Inc., and that was pretty much it.
I saw a goat get slaughtered, and a couple of chickens too. I've seen how they've lived. I've been in slaughterhouses. I've seen how they were killed, debeaking. I've seen them get beaten and stuff, and it's really heartbreaking, especially if you see it face to face and if you watch the animal die in front of you. And that's the biggest thing that made me change. And I've been vegetarian for over 4 years, and I'm still pushing towards veganism right now.
One of my priorities in life is to be consistent with my ethical perspectives, or as consistent as possible. And I've always been a huge animal lover. And I've always questioned why it is that we say we love them, but we eat them. And I think I've always simply brushed that off with the justification that, well, that's just how it is. Animals eat one another. But when I was 13, I actually decided to look into it. And luckily at that time, the internet was around. I'm not that old. And so the first few videos I saw were undercover investigations that were put online by PETA. And I think at that point in time, there was absolutely no justification for us consuming animals, because even if we did kill them, much like other animals kill one another, the methods by which we raised them and how we killed them were absolutely horrific. There was no justification for it. And as I continued finding out about the environmental impacts, the impacts on human life, for example, world hunger, and things like I mentioned before, PTSD experienced by slaughterhouse workers, there was absolutely no justification for killing animals whatsoever. So I've been vegan for 4 years, and I've been vegetarian for 10 years.
Great. Okay. So now we're just going to move into closing remarks. So what we'll do is I'll ask them to give any closing remarks, anything else that they would like to tell the audience. Then I'll open it for one more kind of audience questions, and then after that, the panelists will stick around to have more personal conversations with anyone who would like to have those conversations. And also remember that we have a vegan bake sale if you're hungry. So, yeah.
So 2 quick things I'd like to share is I would love everyone to go and look into the eyes of a pig, a chicken, or a cow and ask themselves why they would want to hurt this animal. It's just like looking into the eyes of your cat or dog. In fact, pigs are more intelligent than dogs even. And I am one of the leaders of Guelph Pig Save, and we often go to the slaughterhouse and we see these animals before they get slaughtered, and each one of them are individuals. Each one of them have thoughts and feelings, and I believe that the value they can give me in companionship is worth much more than one meal, or a few meals even. And secondly, I believe physiologically it does not make sense for us to eat meat, and this can be argued, potentially, but from what I've gathered, first of all, herbivores typically will move their jaws like this, and we do this in a grinding motion when we eat. If you're a carnivore, you will go up and down only. Also, you see a lot of our metabolic diseases are caused by animal products, such as strokes, heart attacks, cancers, things like this are all caused by the different carcinogens that we put into our animals to make them produce faster, as well as the unnatural cholesterol which we consume. So if you think about it, it's not benefiting you, and it's not benefiting them, and it's not benefiting the earth. So you have to think about the whole picture and just understand that they have souls and they have thoughts too.
Just some closing remarks. For me, it's a real comparison to any other kind of social movement, whether that be fair trade or ethical purchasing. It's something that you make a personal choice about, and I'm not sure why veganism or vegetarianism can get made fun of in ways that, say, someone who chooses to only purchase fair trade clothing will not be made fun of, or why people also don't seem to see that the individual really can make a difference. That's something I encounter a lot, that, you not buying that hamburger is not going to save all these animals. Well, neither, to be fair, is buying that one fair trade shirt, but it's all about the build-up. It's all about everybody making these choices, and that really does add up. And on that note, these are just personal choices that you make about what you buy. Everybody makes these choices. Food, you make them 3 times a day at least. And the impact that these choices have makes a huge difference. So it's just important to be aware of what you are buying.
One key point I like to make is that we kill 150 billion animals a year for food alone. And you cannot justify this as being right. This doesn't seem natural. We know that in this generation, people are becoming more obese. We know it has negative impacts on our health. We also know that these animals are sentient beings. They have feelings, they are capable of feeling pain, and they have a desire to live just as much as we do. And that's the distinction I want people to see, that I want them to realize that their lives are as equal as ours is to, as we are, I guess, as ours is to ours, I guess. And that it's definitely hard being vegan or vegetarian, because you are going to have people disagree with you, but it's just something you have to learn to overcome.
I would just like to close with a couple of points. Consuming meat is a bad habit, just like anything else. It's a bad habit like smoking or drinking too much, or maybe even texting when you're driving. There are 3 main components to a habit: stimulus, behavior, and reward. The stimulus can be anything. It can be something like, for example, individuals who smoke when they drink. It could be consuming alcohol is a stimulus for them to start smoking. The behavior is what you carry out. So light up a cigarette and take a puff. And the reward is the positive sensation that you get from carrying out that behavior. We've gotten to a place with alternatives at this point in time where it's incredibly easy to modify these habits. Once you have a bad habit, you can never change it, you can never eliminate it, but you can substitute it. You can, sorry, that's inappropriate. But you can definitely substitute the behavior. So the stimulus can be the same. Oh, I'm hungry. But you can change your behavior. Instead of having a chicken breast, for example, have a vegan chicken breast from Gardein. And the reward is the same. It's delicious and it still fulfills your needs. It's just like any bad habit, you can use the exact same methods to kick it. Also, don't be shy about asking for support. There are so many amazing resources available here in Guelph, available in Toronto, anywhere that you currently live or you're hoping to live in the future, that will help you find the kind of community you need to make it easier for you, and that can help you find the right resources, grocery stores, recipes that you need. Don't be shy about talking to vegans about any difficulties you may be having. Some of the most extraordinary people I've ever met are vegan.
Okay, so I'll open up one more time to any questions, and then after that they'll stick around for just personal conversation. We're asking that the conversation and questions remain appropriate and respectful. So does anyone have any more questions before we close? No? Okay, so we'll give a round of applause for our panelists. And thanks a lot for coming, everyone.